Hey, Baby Blowfish, do you mind if we tell about your birth story? How you were born? Hey everyone, I'm Soda, and this is Baby Ember. We call her Little Fish or Baby Blowfish. And today I wanted to talk about her birth story, and so exciting, wasn't it? Wasn't it? So I woke up on Monday, March 2nd at 4 a.m. to go to the bathroom, which I went to the bathroom a lot, and I noticed that I had my birth show, as in there was some blood when I went to the bathroom. And I'm like, oh boy, this is gonna happen. This is gonna happen soon. And immediately after going to the bathroom, felt some strong intensity in my back, and I could tell that those were not zing zaps or Braxton Hicks contractions. These were full on zap cannons, and they felt a lot different than what I was expecting. It was all in the back, and because with my zing zaps, if there was pain, it was in the groin area, but it was like all the way up to like where my bra line is in the back, and it was just like really strong cramping throughout all of it, and it was very irregular. Like I'd have maybe 3 in a row, and then I wouldn't have one for 20 minutes. So I was just up kind of walking around doing my exercises and stretches that I was told that would help. And then my husband got up, and I told him that it was probably going to be the day. But yeah, he asked if I wanted him to stay home from work, and I said it should be fine for him to go to work, but just to make sure that he's checking his phone in case I need him to come home early. I had a doctor's appointment scheduled that day for her checkup, and so I'm like, okay, well, I've already had 2 times where I went to the hospital and I thought I was in labor and I wasn't, or the first time I thought I was in labor. The second time I thought my water broke, but it was just my mucus plug. And so I'm like, okay, I don't want to go in unless I know 100% sure that it's happening. I had been at 4 centimeters for the last week, and so I knew I was at least there. So I labored at home from 4 a.m. to 10, and I used a lot of my hypnobirthing techniques. I took a bath. I listened to my labor playlist, singing out loud very terribly. But around 10, my husband called just to check up on me, and right when he called and asked how I was, I just had a really, really painful zap cannon, and I was like, yes, I need to come over now. And he's like, okay, it'll be like 45 minutes. So I texted one of my friends from church, and I'm just like, hey, can you just stay with me till my husband gets here? I'm kind of a mess right now. I need some help. And before I could even check my phone again, I heard the doorbell ring, and she was right there. She's like the sweetest lady. And she saw how strong the contractions were, and she's like, what hospital are you delivering at? We need to go there right now. So I texted my husband. I'm like, I'm going to the hospital right now. So he's like, oh shoot, okay, I'll meet you there. So luckily we had all the stuff in the car. We put it all in yesterday, just in case, and because she still had a little over a week left until her due date, but we knew she would be coming early, so we were all prepared. And I got to the hospital just at the same time as him. I was hoping to go without an epidural, but I knew that it was possible I might need one. The main reason I didn't want an epidural was, one, because I have agoraphobia and I get really bad panic attacks when I can't get up and move around if I feel stuck somewhere. And I also know that getting an epidural has a higher likelihood of needing a C-section. So I was there and they checked me and I was almost at a 6. They kept having all these issues with the machines and stuff. Like I had to be hooked up to this thing with liquid to keep me hydrated. And then I also had to be hooked up to the monitor to check my contractions and her heartbeat. And the IV thing, like they tried on both my arms and they just like couldn't get it in. So I was all like, I got all these bruises from it because they just couldn't figure out the veins, which is weird because I usually have like really good veins. So they ended up having to put it in the crease of my arm, which was annoying. So I couldn't bend my arm. And then I was stuck to this machine and they kept having to readjust the monitor. It was like having issues. It wasn't picking up the contractions at all. And the nurse was in there the whole time. Sometimes there were 2 nurses and I just was so frustrated. Like I just wanted alone time with my husband, and like I had all these, and I was still stuck to this machine. So I'm like, this kind of defeats the whole purpose of not having an epidural if like I'm still having to deal with this. And the intensity just grew and grew, and like it wasn't even just like the physical sharp pain that I was expecting. It was just like my whole body, like it's hard to explain. It's like sudden feeling of panic and of just like I felt like I was going to pass out. I felt nauseated. Like I felt like my blood pressure was really low. I don't know if it was, but it felt like really low. I felt really dizzy. At one point, I just collapsed on the ground, and my husband was like, it's so dirty on the ground. Get up. And I'm like, I can't. Like, I couldn't even form sentences at that point. I could just, like, say things like hips, like, to mean I needed him to press on my hips. Or, like, shoulders, ice. Like, I couldn't form sentences at all. And finally, while I was on the ground, when I was saying, like, I can't, I was finally like, epidural. And he's like, finally, that's when the nurse left, and then he went and got the nurse, like, we need an epidural in here. So I came back to give the epidural, and he was warning me about the numbing shot, and honestly, I didn't even notice the little prick for the numbing shot. The hardest part for getting the epidural is that I had to stay still during the contractions, and that was really hard because my natural reaction was just to curl up in a ball or go in a weird position or whatever. But it took about 10 minutes for the epidural to kick in, and once it did, I was feeling so much better. That was about 2:30 that I had the epidural, so I think if I started at 4, it's like 10 and a half hours of labor without an epidural. Then at around 4-ish, my mom got there, and luckily this was right before they changed the visitation thing for the coronavirus, so she was able to be there, and I am so grateful for it because Elaine, my husband, was so tired and needed to take a nap, and I just needed her to distract me, and it was really nice. So, and around that time, I was at a 10 and 100% of phase, so I had to start pushing. And the tricky part is that because I had the epidural, I couldn't feel when a contraction was coming, and the contraction monitor wasn't working. So we were just kind of guessing when I needed to push. They were like feeling my stomach to kind of get an idea, but I had the bands on my stomach, so yeah. And every time I pushed, they noticed that baby was going into distress, and they were worried about that. So after a while, they told me just to stop for a little bit. I think this was around 6, and then a new doctor came, and she saw what was going on, and she's like, no, we need to get this baby out right now with this distress going on. And she's like, yeah, we might have to do a C-section. And so I'm like, oh shoot, like I was trying so hard to avoid that. But she's like, okay, we have 3 options. We can do a C-section, we can try suction, the vacuum, or we could try the forceps. She's like, with the suction, if it doesn't work within like a few pushes, we're gonna have to go C-section. And so I was like so scared, but we thought it would be best to try the suction. So if you pushed a few times, and I'm gonna be honest, I did poop like every time I pushed during that, because I was really determined to get her out and not have the C-section. So it was weird, like it was like push, and then because she used a vacuum, like, because usually the head, this part of the head comes out first, and then the rest of the head, and then the shoulders, and it's kind of a slow process. But this, it was like, oh, she's in there, oh, suddenly she's out, and I was kind of in shock. I'm gonna do another video where I actually have like footage of what it was going on, not just this boring me blabbing in a chair thing. So she came out, and I didn't really get a hold her, but I kind of got to reach out to her. She was all like full of goop, but I was just like, oh my gosh, it's suddenly my baby. But they had to cut the cord right away and take her away, which I was sad about because I wanted that like first cuddle, but I understand they had to make sure she was okay. She swallowed a bunch of blood, and they they needed to get that out. And you pooped like twice, and they got you out, huh? So what happened was, I guess she got in a little fight with the placenta and the umbilical cord. Feisty little baby, huh? Didn't you? Because the cord was wrapped around her neck a few times, and the placenta was ripped off the wall, so that's why she was in so much distress. So it's a good thing that we got her out as soon as possible. She was born about 6:30, and yeah, other than her swallowing some blood, she is perfectly healthy. She did have a little bit of a low temperature, so they had to put her under the light for a while, but she's all good now. So it was tough, but it was totally worth it, and I just love her, and I'm really happy for epidurals. They are great, and also doctors that know what's going on.